It's episode 1 of How to Handshake, Optigo Network's new podcast. On this week's show, Aaron Hastings from Apex Consulting and Alex Weibel from Building Logics join Ping and I to talk about the growing demand for energy efficiency in buildings. We'll also talk energy as a service and how the OT network has become a foundation for energy-saving success. I'm Ryan LaFlamme, and this is How to Handshake, episode 1. Hello, everybody listening and watching. I'm Ryan. This is Ping. Hi, Ping.
Hello, Ping.
I know we've been...
hello, Ryan.
Hello. We've been away for a little bit, but we're back now with a new format, as you can see, and a new name. This is How to Handshake. We are, as I said, debuting a new podcast version of the show. So that's very exciting. And you'll be able to pick it up anywhere you get your podcasts now. So your Apple Play, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all of those great places. So look for that. And our videos will continue to be hosted on YouTube. You can just simply search Optigo Networks for the YouTube channel, and we'll be there. Like we said, we're going to be adding new guests, so that's a lot of fun. We felt that there was a lot of great discussion and through the break, and what sort of sparked this retooling, and Ping, by all means, feel free to add anything. There were a lot of people out there who are really, really smart and have a lot of really great ideas for, not only the industry as it is right now, but where it's sort of heading. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Ping, but we really wanted to bring people in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have great members of a community who have amazing stories, amazing piece of information. And I always felt that there's a lack of exposure to these great case studies, these great ideas, ways of working. So yeah, I'm really excited for this new way that we're going to do these podcasts and giving these different people a platform to give their view and their thoughts.
I guess we might as well jump right into it. Being episode 1, as we mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be joined this week by Aaron and Alex. Aaron is a consultant with Apex Consulting, and Alex is the president of Building Logics. And we are going to talk about energy efficiency and the increasing demand now for energy efficiency in a lot of buildings. Of course, we'll bring it back to how having a good OT network is really critical to achieving, energy efficiency. I think it's Alex who said, you can't build a beautiful house if the foundation is uneven and cracked.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're going to stay true to what we do, right?
Absolutely.
We are the foundation. The network is where everything gets carried over. And so if that doesn't work, all these other methods and applications don't work. So
yeah, absolutely. So without any further ado, here's our first segment, and I'll be back with you at the end to let you know what's coming up. First thing I'd like to do is just quickly go around the room, and if you could just say who you are and what you do, who you work for, what you do.
I'm Aaron Hastings. I am the president of Apex Consulting Systems. I help facilities and portfolio managers find a cash flow positive path to upgrading their building automation systems and other infrastructure. So I find them a little cash, and then I help them make the upgrades and updates that they're looking for.
I'm Alex Weibel. I'm the president of Building Logics. We're a technology business that works with contractors, engineers, commissioning agents, end users, helping them drive smarter decisions around the infrastructure of their business for energy and operational efficiencies.
Excellent. And Ping, as always, we know you.
Yeah, if they're watching this video, most of you likely would have already seen my face. My name is Ping. I'm one of the co-founder. I'm currently the Chief Technology Officer for Optigo Networks. My day-to-day is writing code, looking at what customers need, and defining the roles, the features that our product should have. My background is in networking. So I've been in networking for about 25 years. And stumbled in this world of building automation now 12 years ago.
Just a few. As we said at the top of the show, we are trying to take a little focus on the increased emphasis on energy efficiency in automation and smart automated buildings. And that over the last few years, this has become far more important to the industry and to buildings through internal and external pressures. And what better time to sort of talk about the role, at least for us, of the OT networking side and its role, its new role or increased role in helping to create the conditions for great energy efficiency. So I just like to start the conversation off with sort of a first question here is, how do you see the role of OT networking, obviously, in energy efficiency? We'll go around the circle here. So I'll start with you, Ping.
Yeah. In my view, the concept of the OT network when it comes to energy efficiency is a degree removed. And I'm sure Alex and Aaron could tell us a lot more about that. Those who are embarking in energy efficiency, net zero programs, network is an afterthought. It's not even top of mind. They come up with a program, they come up with an initiative, and then realize, oh, wait, we need to connect these things. I think the word OT network and energy, unfortunately today, is not tightly coupled. I disagree with that. I think the networking discussion should be on the table right after the owners decide that they want to embark in this called net zero energy and efficiency program.
Mm-hmm. Alex, I see you shaking your head there.
Well, I think your question, A, is a good one. I think it requires a little context. I mean, if you're talking about new buildings, then the connection between the network and energy efficiency certainly exists. And, what Ping just said, I wouldn't argue with at all. I would agree with entirely. We deal a lot more with existing buildings where the network infrastructure is an afterthought. I mean, there's a lot more existing buildings than there are going to be new buildings over the next, depending on where you live. If you're in Dubai, this probably doesn't, equate, but certainly where I live, there's a lot more existing buildings than there will be new for the next 50 years. And the people that are owning, operating, managing those buildings, they still got to deal with lights, that are T8s and T12s or, and moving them to LEDs. So
Yep.
The connection between the network and energy efficiency, I think, is more inside of the new construction or a heavy retrofit than it is in trying to drive efficiency inside of existing buildings.
Aaron, I was very curious what you might think as well as a consultant.
So I find that the relationship between energy efficiency and OT networks is very close, depending on the context again. So for example, you can do a lot of things in a single building. You can go to Guideline 36, ASHRAE Guideline 36 programming. You can get some energy efficiency there that tends to stay local to the building automation system that's on the site. However, if you need to go beyond that, you will need to find a way to tame 1,100 buildings, 1,500 buildings, have them all dance the same way. Many consultants will say you just need to rip it all out and make it Cat 5 because otherwise you don't have the bandwidth, and that's not the case at all. But it does mean you need to be more in tune to the specifics of the individual sites and locations. Some back in MSTP trunks are overloaded before you even look at them, and some of them are great and they got room to spare. So it's the kind of thing where it takes a bit of expertise.
I think you mean most, Aaron, not some.
Yeah, they do. They got room to spare.
MSTP overloaded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the idea is that there can be a lot of room there to work with, but the idea is that you need somebody who has had their hands in it and isn't afraid of it to be able to assess appropriately. And very often you can get a lot of great interaction out of the existing systems. It just depends on how you implement it.
Right. And I think that actually is a good sort of segue to this next question, which is, I think we all agree that there isn't just a general answer. How do we utilize granular data? How do we use that to its to maximum effect? And so I was just curious, in your experiences, how have you seen, or how do you think facilities can use sort of granular data you can get from OT networks, from BACnet traffic and BACnet packets? And I guess related to that, where are we failing? Where are we failing to get that data that's out there and we're just not using it?
I would like to break Ryan's question in two parts. I am curious.
Cool.
Sorry to hijack this a little bit.
Nope.
Ryan, Alex, in your experience, do most energy programs just use utility bills that are 3 months old, and they take the last 3 years of energy bills and then build a program around that? Or are we now seeing the metro using near real-time granular data?
I mean, we're heavy into higher education and healthcare especially. And I think in most of those scenarios, they're either already have an existing system of meter infrastructure where they're pulling data in and looking at things, on an incremental level, of say 15 to 5 minute data. There's going to be exceptions to that rule that are still working off utility bills, but not many. I think it's going to be dependent on, if you're working with a CBRE or, maybe a larger property owner / manager that understands the significance of the property as an investment vehicle, is probably looking at those things and saying, the more I can drive cost out of it and increase my revenue potential, then I can use it from a borrowing perspective. That's going to give me leverage to make investments. But Aaron, I think I'd be interested if you agree with that or if I'm off base.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it sounds right. I think the key, though, is what Ping was asking about was using real-time utility meter rate data to decide how you will or will not do something. And that does happen. It doesn't happen frequently enough. Also, it implies things like demand response so that you can have the utility say, we are overloaded. We need you to shed some load. And in return, we give you a cut on your utility bills. But it does mean that you need to either have an independent source of power or you need to just tolerate that you're not going to have comfort for 3 hours. And that level of flexibility is not with a lot of customers. So that means that although the infrastructure to make that data useful is there, not a lot of customers are in a position to make a use of it because they don't have the independent source of power, or they're not willing to sacrifice the comfort that they need to.
And thank you for clarifying that. So I guess maybe part of what I would say is, it's going to depend on where you are, and we work primarily in the United States, where they are in the country and what utility structure they're in. Are they in a regulated or deregulated market? Can they take advantage of demand response or other incentives from the utility? I'm saying it that way because in some cases, the rates maybe aren't going up, but the structures are changing. Again, it depends on whether you're close or inside of a territory where there's a lot of data centers being built, especially AI data centers, and how the states or, the utility commission allowed those to come in. Are they passing the costs of new generation and transmission lines onto the users?
And are you seeing that now?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Big time.
Yes.
Wow.
Huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with a client today in West Virginia. I mean, they've seen their utility rates skyrocket here recently and move from, a single demand charge on a monthly or annual basis to a daily basis. We've seen utility rate increases anywhere from 50 to 500% on the demand side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really significant increase, especially if you're running manufacturing, production, large chiller plants.
Absolutely.
And
it's not just a cost per kilowatt hour. It's that if you exceed this much usage, then you are placed into another bracket so that now your delivery charge before you even get charged for the power, just to have it hooked up, is more. And so people are trying to avoid, they call it a ratchet rate or demand rate. Yeah, it's going nuts. And a little bit of a spin too. Ping was more talking about using utility rates and having that data come through, but there is an opportunity, and I'm doing this, to use minute by minute or 5 minute or 15-minute interval data from electrical meters on your plant to run an AI that says my kilowatts per ton is this, and I want to drive that down, and I need real-time meter read locally to then use that, and you can have that communicate back and forth.
Now that's very
so it's like a kind of like a PID that drives for kilowatt per ton, more or less. So you need to have real-time meter reads. It doesn't come from the utility rate. It comes from a local source, but that's the idea, and it still travels over the wire.
Right. Right. So it incorporating those into the decision-making process from local sources, not just external sources, which is, I mean, obviously that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, this increased service charges, increased utility prices are obviously becoming a big factor in wanting to, I suppose, have an increased factor or increased interest on energy efficiency in new builds, but also, like I think you were saying, Alex, there's obviously a lot of retro refits coming in the future. It seems with these skyrocketing prices. How should we look at structuring the network or structuring our OT network to gather that data and prove that these upgrades, these energy efficient changes are actually working over the long haul?
Yeah, I'll use this opportunity to talk about the relevant part, obviously, with optical visual networks, and is that we do hear often with Alex's a team also that we run into, let's call them projects, where they have started and they've spent lots of money on this energy program, and then got very little return, perhaps got negative return, because they implemented all these rules, all these changes, these dynamic approach to things, but the system they installed on, the network, we call it, installed on, is not capable of sustaining it. There was underlying problems that just got highlighted, amplified when they made certain, quote unquote, attempted improvements. So my point here is these programs have to keep the system engineering in mind. We can't just look at, well, let's change the schedule and we'll push the schedule more often, not knowing what the impact is on the system. And again, for us, we believe that the best way to look at the health of the system is to look at the traffic that goes across it by monitoring the network. So
I have to agree with that. Yeah, you have to know what it's doing. There's no way to just guess or assume.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a recipe for frustration and wanting to stab yourself in the eye with a fork because I thought it was great. Now it's not. And it's a mess. And how much are we going to pay for this? And on and on and on. So if you can do something that only pings maybe 15 or 20 points every 10 or 15 minutes, then you've got a good chance here. And a good example is the chiller plant. You can get a chiller plant, but there's a good amount of stuff in there, but it's all in one place and there's not that many points you need to poke on. So strategy and implementation is important, as well as knowing what your systems are doing under the hood. A good building automation guy should be able to tell you that my electrical meter is popping offline several times a day, and so we can't use that for what we want to use it for, as an example. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of good building automation guys in the industry in general. They try hard, a lot of them do, but there's not a lot of good training, not a lot of good background, and then you're good with this brand, but that brand, it gets messy. Also, a lot of times what you need is off of the MSTP trunk. And sometimes people are not able to meter or to Wireshark that close to what they need to. And there may be several MSTP trunks involved and they're not catching that data close as they need to. So they're missing something and they don't know they're missing something because they don't understand the mechanics of what's involved. Things right on the money. You have to make sure your underlying fundamentals are good so you can get that data where it needs to go. And in the meantime, you can start with high impact things that have high impact things on your money, on your bill that have a low impact on your network, so that you can then say, well, now that we're saving 2 or 5 or 10 grand a month, now we have some money to invest in some of these other things, and we can then go on a phased rollout and then make these things happen down the line.
Actually, the only thing I would add, and Ping mentioned this, so I think this was the first engagement we had with Optigo, was we were working with a large campus. They certainly wanted to save money. They were getting ready to make an investment. We ended up using your tools to really understand how well the network was operating in terms of passing data, and recognized pretty early on, you got some problems that we don't want to take ownership of, nor do we want to get finger pointing around when we put our application on there. Here's what the issues are that need to be rectified before we can really start talking about how you're going to start implementing changes on your campus infrastructure until you get your campus network really in a position where we know the data that's coming is reliable, it's consistent, and we don't have huge gaps. And whether that's on BACnet, whether it's on Modbus, whether it's, integrated with an existing BAS system, it is a real challenge. And I think that is where, an OT network and energy management do converge, because if the data is not reliable, it's hard to make the right decisions, no matter what vehicles are available for them.
Mm-hmm.
If that data isn't sound.
That's a good question. And actually, I'll throw that back at you, Aaron. Is how do you, when you're working with your clients, how do you verify that the starting point, the data itself, the integrity of that? What are some of the ways that you make sure that you have the clean data to base your decisions off of?
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of times we have the data. It's just whether or not we can get it reliably. Does it go on and offline, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's, first off, is it there at all? And then, of course, can I get it when I need it? And a lot of times I go into the individual systems and I do it the hard way, and I check and see what their individual diagnostics internally are saying about those things. But I have used Optigo before. There was a really fun one where there was a site with 300 devices that had broadcasts happening from the same device via BACnet IP and BACnet Ethernet, which is a router loop, and made the IP side extraordinarily grumpy. And all the MSTP trunks were very happy, which is not usual. That's usually the other way around. So you had to, again, just like Alex said, benchmarking some way is critical. But there are systems that are it's just not feasible to do the entire site in a systematic way without having a tool like Optigo, honestly.
In a large building or campus, what do you think are some of the most effective ways that you can identify what we're referring to as zombie loads? The things like equipment communicating on BACnet, you can see them, but they're not serving anybody. They're not actually serving active occupants or areas like that. How do you typically find something like that and deal with it in your?
Who do you want to go first?
Oh,
yeah.
All right, Aaron, go ahead.
So trending is key for these, right? If you have systems that don't load up and they don't have any work it seems to do, then that's the best way to go. On smaller systems, you can go through the individual balloting automation system and look at those trends individually. When it comes to how they're loading your network, though, it's just important to make sure that you have things like COVs set properly. There was a really good article you guys put out recently on using it when you need to, but not overusing it if it makes things go south, which is really good. It's good for lightening the load. I find that a well-done polling network tends to do just fine most of the time. So if the payoff is big, then you've got the room to do this, and it's a good thing to do.
Yeah. And on our side, I'll say a shameless plug for Optigo. As I mentioned before,
well, there's no shame here.
Yeah. I mean, the university I mentioned before, that's become classy, our standard practice. So the first thing we do, and I've talked with Ping about this, I mean, we offer, your tool and our expertise as a service to our clients, because to Aaron's point, there's not a lot of people that are capable of doing it. So understanding how good that network is, and again, in the scenarios that we're typically working, it's not one building. And truthfully, there's a lot of education with the client that I can't just look at the network inside of your new education building or your new science building, because it's connected to your campus network. And if you've got a device ID that's the same in this new building, that's also in one that's 50 years old and was retrofitted 20 years ago, you're going to have problems because you have duplicate IDs. And, though that's maybe not the biggest problem that you're going to have. And, there's a number of different zombie loads that, can exist and do exist out inside of certainly campus infrastructures. And it's why we've, like I said, why we've incorporated your technology as part of our best practices to say, let's make sure the data that we're getting is clean and reliable before we add a new element into it and more finger pointing begins.
Yeah, there's an understanding that there's a problem there, but when you really need to know, they're not going to volunteer that information. But then when you bring it up, then suddenly, oh yeah, I thought you mentioned, oh, that's so true. Yeah.
Actually, Ryan, I want to ask a side question. Both Aaron and Alex, I don't know the answer to that one, so I'm truly asking a question. How often do you see, I'm going to say customers, but projects, buildings, whatever sites that have initiated some form of energy analytics, whatever brand, it doesn't matter. And after X period, a year or 2 year, abandon it?
I think one of the eye-opening things that actually we realized here recently at a conference that we went to, and last time I saw you, going up to some of the people of asking them, how many are you doing? How many buildings do you have this connected to? And the answer is typically a pretty small number. And the question is more often around the scaling capability of the licensing structure.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's probably a bigger challenge.
I know in both your cases, you often get pulled in as like the savior. And what I mean is both your cases, I know we talked about this, where you have customer who 5 years ago engaged into an energy analytics program and didn't get the outcome, and then sometimes crawl back, but sometimes come back or go to you to ask you, okay, we know the promised land is there. We can get there ourselves. That's what I was wondering about is, and I think, Alex, you answered my question is that often it's just getting started looks easy, but really getting value out of it.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes. And that value thing is important. So I wasn't always a consultant. So before I was a consultant, I was the one that was trying to implement these things from other consultants and realizing, why are you doing this is nuts. So we had a site where they didn't have a lot of maintenance budget, and someone gave them a dog and pony show saying that you can do SkySpark and it's going to save you all this money. Yeah. And they realized after having it for 9-10 months that yes, it could. However, we don't have the manpower to fix the stuff that's on fire, much less go ahead of those things, fix the sparks that are in SkySpark. I think Alex was alluding to that to a certain extent. I do find other places where their energy management, but having an energy program, those can be done well. And the ones that are, of course, they stick. The management portion is important. However, another piece of it is that they often don't scale well, so that they do really well on 1 or 2 sites, but it's hard how you're going to do it across a portfolio. Or they have an issue where each building is a little bit of a snowflake, and there's not the flexibility on those implementing in order to make it fit the particular circumstances of this or that other building.
Yeah. And putting it simply, we talk people, process, technology in that order for a reason. The technology is a tool. You have to have people that can drive. You have to have processes that you can, standardize things on and make sure that you're following principles. And truthfully, you got to, again, just learning from mistakes, which is called experience. You got to start small and prove that it can work. And then you have to identify, where do we go from here? And that doesn't mean you take one bite of the apple and then try and eat the whole thing in one bite. It means you find another place to start biting off.
Right. Yeah, it seems to me everybody sort of seems to be in agreement here that it's not always it's certainly not a failure in all situations of not having the data. It's knowing what to do with it once you have it. I suppose it's the difference between insights and actionable insights. And I think you've all sort of mentioned that sometimes without outside expertise and without people that have lived through these experiences, it seems like that's where you're seeing ping perhaps those situations where you start off ambitious and 5 years later it's like, well, great, we have these reams of data, but we don't know what to do with it. And so we end up going to these outside experts. Does that sort of sound like a common scenario to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of data. Data's like the phone book. It's antiquated at this point. We really have to convert data into actionable information. And then you have to have the people that can take that action. And identifying what needs to be done is not typically measured in days or weeks or months, but what's identified could take days or weeks or months to complete, because you're talking about limited resources. You're talking about ordering and getting materials in. You're talking about rescheduling buildings. So even though you have all the materials, you may not be able to get into that part of the building for literally months. So those are some of the challenges too, of creating the result.
And I think that perhaps Ping on our side, from our side, we don't see those actual, the realities of the projects, right? We're involved in, solutions can be solved by reinstalling, or here is a bug fix or something like that. And these are
or reboot my machine.
Yeah, I'll just reboot my machine.
You got me this morning.
But yes, it's something we talk about, and I talk about, is up the ladder with a multimeter to try and diagnose an issue with MSTP. But the reality on the ground is that you guys have to, this is lived experience for you and lived experience for the people in the facilities departments, is that solving or identifying an issue is in some sense step one, solving it.
Be interested in Aaron's perspective on this, because you've obviously used some FDD platforms, and that's what we do. I make a concentrated effort to take some of, I'll say, our service people, which are really virtual technicians, out into the field, working and seeing some of the clients that they deal with and talk to on a regular basis. And that's something that I want to do with each of them a couple times each year. And, my favorite question to ask when we get done is, okay, what'd we learn today? So I asked Nicholas the question, what'd we learn? And his answer was really interesting. He's like, I had no idea how much those guys walk in a day. He's like, what do you say? He walks 4.5 to 5 miles a day. He's like, the other thing I never realized is how many times he's interrupted as soon as he gets out of an equipment room and into a hallway, how many interruptions there are. He's like, no wonder he can't remember whether he turned that or fixed this or replaced that or ordered something, because of all the number of distractions. There are that many distractions, and we got to be really clear about what needs to be done and why we think this is a priority.
Yeah, I see that same thing. Because I was a mechanical guy once upon a time, I tend to get just an eyeball scan of a room or even some pictures, and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, your outdoor area louver is way too close to your generator. Did you guys ever think of that? Or those mechanical issues, your primary, secondary loop piping is not piped right. And I'm not going to see that in the graphic, or the graphic says this, but that's not how they're really done. Is it really that way? Because I don't know if I want to trust that graphic or not. Then it really helps when it comes to then implementing your energy saving measures. Is this going to really help somebody? Am I going to be able to make a lot of room for improvement here when the mechanicals are like this and they've got a triple net lease and they've got tenants that don't care, or whatever the case may be? There's a lot of rubber that has to meet the road there. So above and beyond what you mentioned with the people on the ground, what are their abilities to respond to things and prioritizing right? Oh, that's huge. And they're going to love you for it. When you stop inundating them with things that they just realize right away are just, this is not really helpful at all. And instead you prioritize for them. But then above and beyond that is they're able to catch things that maybe they didn't even realize. Like, oh, that's the reason why my steam hammers all the time. Those are the kinds of things, while you're at it, this is not my thing. However, I just did that, recently with some flow hoods that we were doing at a fume hoods in a university where they were doing chemical labs, and they were having their fume hoods done. And we had, like, by the way, this is not in my scope. However, you may wish to look at this and this and this, because this will really help you. I know. Oh yeah, thank you so much. It's really nice. Thank you for pointing that out.
Well, they're all. By the way, just to add to it, the two things I observed when I got the chance to visit. Two is somewhat to what both of you have said. The reliance on non-digital based information is so prevalent still. Stickers on the box that says, device ID or indoor temperature, AI. I'm like, I can't believe, like, so if you made a change and someone forgot to change the sticker, people are still relying on what's physically written. Number one. Number two is the acceptance of mediocrity. You watch something, click on the graphic, and they just turn around to you, just like, we'll just be patient. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how do you work like that?
Don't live with that. Yeah.
They've accepted it. Like, this industry is, that hasn't worked for like a month. a month would be pretty good. It hasn't worked for 6 months. But what do you mean? Like how do you do your job? Oh, I walk over there and just look at the thermometer that's hanging on the side. What? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go to, I guess this would be our last question. It's a wrap-up question. It's open to everybody. And I'm going to start. It's a two-parter. So the first one, and I think going forward, I'm going to ask everybody this, is MSTP. Is it a technology that's still worth having around? Or is it time to start seriously thinking about moving away from it? And second to that is, what do you think might be some practical energy efficient benefits of migrating MSTP trunks to something like a BACnet IP? Start with you, Ping, and then I'm going to go to Alex, and then
we got some heated discussion going. It was on LinkedIn.
This is the spicy question. Yeah,
that was a spicy question.
I'm glad you guys are ready for that, because I think it's going to get that way right now.
Yeah.
In my opinion, first of all, the cost of MSTP versus IP-based controllers is almost the same today. It was not the case 10 years ago. 5 years ago, it got a little closer. Today, the difference in price is almost nothing. Okay. Now the cabling, yes, installing a Cat5 cable with the actual RJ11, RJ45, sorry, not telephone lines, RJ45 connector is a little bit more work than just stripping a wire and putting it inside a terminal. I'm just saying that the cost argument of why MSTP is still being installed, right, does not apply in my strong opinion. If you still believe, for those who are saying I'm still installing MSTP other than adding to an existing network, review the information that you have at hand, review the cost, review the benefits of it. I strongly believe that new construction should not have MSTP, with some exceptions, of course. The distance is still a good argument. Cat5 only goes 300 feet. MSTP.
I'm with you on that one. The cost difference is marginal. I'm with you. Yeah.
Marginal. Yeah. Now, again, I do want to be clear. MSTP still has a very big use case, because there's a lot of equipment out there that is MSTP, and we're going to continue to have lots of MSTP for the next 20 years, because just the rate of retrofit is not that high, and that's normal. I'm okay with that. But just new construction.
There you go. Alex, I'll pass the mic to you.
Well, in the context of new buildings, I don't have much to add to that. Other than the rare times that I've dealt in new construction or heavy retrofit where they're going to do it, is they do have to understand that if they're going to build out an IP-based network, it has to be isolated from their business network. It does have to be an OT network from a cybersecurity standpoint. I think that's one of the things that, we still have a lot of education to do.
Fair, yeah.
And that includes not just the facilities or energy or operations team. That includes the campus or, organization IT team as well. On existing buildings, I'm a big believer in don't replace something that's not broken. And to Ping's point, if that's the infrastructure that you already have, adding a small piece of IT infrastructure, I could probably argue both sides of that, of, hey, this is why you might consider doing it, because at some point, this is the way that everything's going to go. At the same time, if we're talking about 2 to 3 controllers that need to be added, I probably would just extend the MSTP network. Because it's not as big of a pain in the ass.
Good point. Yes.
There are business realities to deal with, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah.
Good. So I had an article on my LinkedIn about BACnet SC, just kind of talking about the cybersecurity issues and such. And this was written just before the standard was updated early in 2025. But one of the interesting points, though, is that there's the realities of MSTP has security by obscurity, and it's physically impossible to transmit most malicious things over MSTP networks. There's an advantage there from a cybersecurity standpoint. There's a disadvantage because you can't monitor it like you can a Cat5 plug. However, if your organization doesn't have the ability to take advantage of the advantages of IP, then stay MSTP. It's the preferred cybersecurity posture if that's where your technology and infrastructure are at. My other thought was about T1L is coming out. And so it's able to take existing 2-wire networks, make them Ethernet. They're not 100 base, they're 10 base, but honestly, that's way more than we need for most applications. With 10 base in T1L, it allows for a way to squeeze more out of the existing hardware that's there so that the future proofing is not as much of an argument. Although I will say that T1L is still a little bit young and it's remains to be seen how that shakes out right now. I have a thread on HVAC Talk where the guys are chiming in about the specifics of how they are installing it, what they're seeing, what the cable lengths are, depending on the lengths and type of cable that's used. You get a lot of promises, not a lot of feedback.
Yeah, obviously you've done some work on that, and I mean I'm familiar with what that is. Who actually is providing hardware that will work in that infrastructure? Where I've got an existing infrastructure in MSTP that I want to convert through T1L. What are the choices that exist?
Yeah, so and the big one's not just MSTP to T1L, but it's LAN to T1L. So instead of pulling new LAN cable or new backnet cable, they're able to use the existing cable and put T1L on it, which is great. So now you're backnet IP from LAN. And of course, all your controllers have to change, but you don't have to pull new wire. So Distech has just announced that they're putting it out. Honeywell's been out for a year and change. Delta has been out for, I think, 6 or 7 months with T1L. And basically at this point, it looks like anybody who has a head on their shoulders is trying to get into that game as fast as possible, because otherwise you're leaving a lot of retrofit market share on the table by not having this as an option.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I want to, not to cut this off, but I do want to revisit this like as an episode, as a whole discussion topic.
It's okay. You're just pre-recording it, basically.
Oh, 100%. This is
well, if you want to have us back, I mean, we could do that too.
Just have people from throughout the year just chiming in like, yeah, this is good. And then 6 months later, it's like, it's terrible. So
yeah. So the idea is cybersecurity is, future proofing is not much of an issue for me because you can now just skip over and go T1L. Theoretically, it's still new. We got to be sure about that. Ping's argument about the marginal cost is valid. There's just not a lot of big difference in going one or the other versus in a new construction environment. And then cybersecurity, it really depends on the level of organization that you have. Everyone needs to take advantage of the IP infrastructure, cybersecurity capabilities, but if you can't, then stay MSTP.
And just to be clear, T1L is closer. Well, it is back in the IP, right? Just to be clear,
right?
It just functionally a single pair. So for those who are, it is not saying that you're extending the life of MSTP. You're just extending the life of the wiring. Right. It does get you to megabits per second as opposed to bauds.
Exactly. It's going to look functionally transparent on your IP network. You will not notice any difference whatsoever until you go there and realize, hey, there's no Cat5 plug. This is single pair. So
that's right. But it is Ethernet. It is IP over.
Yeah. I don't think I knew that. I think I assumed that it was just continue to show up as an MSTP network. So that
no. From a networking standpoint, it will be no different than a backnet IP, backnet Ethernet, or Ethernet network. The only difference is that first of all, it will be 10 megabits instead of 1 gigabit. But again, 10 megabit is still 1,000 times faster than MSTP and 500 times faster than ArcNet.
Yes.
But it is packet based. There's no tokens, and it is point to point also. Whereas an MSTP is a coax. Everyone talks at once on the same network. So it is IP.
So did you have one more question, Ping, or was that it?
I did. So unrelated to T1L, I do want to hear from you both. When we talk about energy programs, energy analytics, all of these. There's a component of like you come up with some changes you want to bring to your system that should reduce energy cost. So that's let's call it a write, an update to the system. The read side, the gathering the data, Aaron was saying earlier, poll every 15 seconds or get the data and let's go further and present it in some form of dashboard, right? In building logics, you have these dashboard provide you the information you want. That information is to view the operation of the system as is right now at this moment. Why gather that data continuously? Why view it continuously?
So gathering the data is crucial because every energy saving project functions on the premise that it will pay for itself. And the only way to know that is by gathering the data, then therefore prove it, that this is what we used before, this is what we used after. I have a case study I'm doing tomorrow for the Department of Energy where we have to show this is what it was before, and you see the kilowatts per ton go down, and this is what it is after, and this adds up to so much money, and that means it pays for itself in so much time, because if it doesn't make dollars and cents, then the people downstream don't get the benefit. And so we have to start with making sure we take care of all the stakeholders that are involved. But having the data, though, is really crucial to validating any energy product.
Yeah, very similar. I would say, I guess the way I typically answer that is, I mentioned this earlier, if you have T8 or T12 light bulbs and you convert them to LEDs, the energy savings are instantaneous, and they're going to continue to operate more energy efficiently than what was there before, without question. On the mechanical side, and Aaron said this earlier, every building's a snowflake, and every building is designed by an engineer in a perfect world and does not have people involved.
Disturbed.
And as soon as somebody complains that it's too loud in here, or I'm not comfortable anymore, or I'm too cold, and somebody goes and makes an adjustment to that, not only can they eliminate the savings that they were getting, they can literally turn it backwards and start costing more energy than what they were before. And what we found is, in most buildings, when you really do start collecting data and you start identifying I'll call it the big rocks that they should be spending time on, they realize we probably created more energy costs to us trying to eliminate complaints around comfort than we would have ever saved from an energy standpoint. And I think that's why there is an important factor of not only collecting historical and saving that data, but then collecting data after an implementation of something, because it is a system. So when I make a change to the office I'm sitting in, it has an impact on the entire set of VAV boxes that are connected to that rooftop unit or air handler that's connected to that boiler and that chiller plant. And that's why that data does matter.
I want to thank you guys for dropping by and talking. This has been actually really illuminating to me. And as our first panel, I think it went swimmingly. Thank you very much. Aaron, where can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, Aaron Hastings, and I have a website, apexconsultingsystems.net, but the LinkedIn's better maintained, in all honesty.
Excellent. And Alex?
You can learn more about us at buildinglogics.net. We also have a YouTube page that you can check out some of the videos that we've created over the last couple of years in terms of stuff that we do. Or you can check us out on LinkedIn as well. So,
excellent.
And that's Logic.
Thank you very much. And nice meeting you, Aaron. I'll be touching base with you.
There you go.
Yeah, I want to catch up. I knew of you, but now I think I know you a little better. We gotta chit chat and talk shop.
I think so.
Our show is bringing people together. This is
that's right.
Better than we could ever hope.
It's so hard to find people where I don't have to explain for 15 minutes what I do for a living before I can even start to have a conversation that gets broken up over and over again about what are you talking about with lawn, FT10? What are you even saying to me? Right? Okay. So just to not have that barrier is liberating. Yeah, you guys are my people for sure. It's very, very nice.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us on How to Handshake. How to Handshake was created by Optigo Networks. You can find us on YouTube and at optigo.net. Tune in 2 weeks for the next episode.